Hello everybody and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I am so excited to have you here with me today. If you are new here, then welcome, and if you are not new here, welcome back. My name is Rachel and I am a speaker, an author, a business owner, but most importantly for today, I am an accountant. I run my very own chartered accountancy practice, and I run the online platform Accountancy, which is the safe place and community for young training accountants that I wished I'd had when I was training to be an accountant. And this video in particular is one that I was desperate for. So today we are going to be talking about how to pass accountancy exams. I feel like there should be a little asterisk. I feel like there should be a little star at the end of that title that says how to pass accountancy exams from somebody who failed accountancy exams. My training, my exams was a whole journey, and I feel so passionately about the fact that we all need to speak openly about failure as much as it's important to shout about success. And so if you are somebody that spends time on LinkedIn or Facebook communities, or like you're in a WhatsApp group with all of the people that you go to college or university with, and people are rightly celebrating their successes, please never doubt that there are people who fail too. I failed, I think, 3 of my accountancy exams through my journey. One of them I actually failed twice. And so I think talking about failures, talking about the really difficult bits, actually really encourage others to speak openly, and actually breaks down a lot of the stigma around accountancy exams. It is really competitive within the industry, and so often it can feel like we're unable to speak about it. So please take it from somebody that failed. These are all of the tips that I learned along the way to get to the point where in the end I actually wasn't failing any exams at all. And so today I'm so excited to be talking about how to pass accountancy exams. I've actually broken this big topic into 2 different sections. So for the first part of the video, I'm going to be talking about knowing, reading and understanding the material of your course. And then the second part is actually going to be how to revise, prepare and study for actually passing and taking an exam. For me, they were 2 very different things. Understanding the material was one thing, and then actually managing myself through an exam was a different beast. I'm somebody that struggled really badly with see, I'm getting it now. I'm somebody that struggled really badly with exam anxiety. And so preparing for the exam was actually a whole separate part for me, which is why I wanted to break this down into 2 sections. So let's get this show on the road. I just want to take a moment to say thank you to First Intuition for sponsoring this video. First Intuition have been training accountants to pass their AAT, ACCA, CIMA and ICAEW accounting exams since 2007. Okay, so first up in section 1, which is knowing the material, I'm going to talk about keeping up with the content. So it doesn't matter if you are doing a degree in accountancy, you're just starting your journey with AAT, or you're all the way through into your chartered exams. Knowing the material is so important. Accountancy lessons build on each other. So from the basic concepts all the way through to your final lessons. With every lessons, you are taking the skills and the knowledge that you've learned in the previous lesson into the next. And so making sure that you're keeping up to date and you're keeping on top of those concepts is vital. When you start falling behind, it can escalate and snowball. And so keeping on top of it from the beginning is really important. Again, as we go through from one lesson to the next, keeping up with those concepts and how they build on each other, but also how they relate to each other is really important. And so my top tips for keeping up with the content are: review your notes after every lesson and just make sure that you are focusing in on anything that, if you were using a traffic light system, for example, anything that is red or amber, you are reviewing again before the next lesson. The traffic light system has saved my life on many occasions, in many parts of my life, but if you were reviewing a chapter, for example, actually going through and breaking down that chapter into sections and understanding and taking a moment to reflect, how do I feel about this chapter? Is it green? Is it amber? Or is it red? Can really help you to prioritize what you need to focus on in between lessons. My second tip is to just go back through any questions that you covered in class, go back through them and attempt them again, even if that is a green topic and you got the question right, go through it again. It can really help your brain really condense that topic and like make it set in your brain. Finally, don't hesitate to ask for help. If there is any amber or red topics and you've run through your notes again and you're still confused, again, as I've said, the topics build on each other. So it's really important that at the time you ask for help. It could be a peer, it could be an online community, could be in the comments in a YouTube video, but ask for help, seek clarification before you move on to the next step. So that is top tip 1, is keeping up with the content. My next tip is to understand why. By nature, accounting terms and concepts are set up to be as logical as possible, and understanding why certain things are done in certain ways or certain things work in a certain way are key to giving you insight into what to do to tackle certain problems or questions when you get to the exam. So I always imagine myself as like one of those 3-year-olds that just only ever says the word why. So anything that you get taught in an accounting lesson or an accounting class, just say why at every opportunity, and building that sort of context around the why do we do it this way? Why does it feed into, this concept feed into this concept in that way, can really build that extra knowledge around you so that if you're missing one piece of that puzzle in an exam, you can actually use the concept surrounding it to help you get to the answer. And so some practical, actionable tips that you can do to actually implement this understanding why concept is when you're using flashcards within your revision process. On the flashcard, if you are defining a key term, for example, you can define the term, but then also underneath the term, add in some context. So in what circumstances would you see or apply this term? So my second tip is to just not skim over those little bubble discussion points in your textbook. Actually discuss them, even if it is out loud to yourself or with a classmate. My next tip is to talk about problems, solutions, and questions in your textbook with a classmate or a tutor. Again, talking about these things, having like real world conversations about them can really help you to zoom out and understand the context rather than just focusing on the question. Okay, so my next tip under knowing the material is practice questions. So once you can see and understand why things are done, it's time to move on to how they are done. So my top tip for this section is to go through every single possible practice question you can find, whether that is reworking questions that you did in class or any homework that you were given. Go through every opportunity and answer every question. Okay, so as we are running through the practice questions, my next section is all about organizing your thoughts. So I said at the beginning that something I really struggled with was exam anxiety, and that came with lots of feelings of feeling overwhelmed and like not really understanding how to approach the question. And so finding a way to organize your thoughts can really help you to keep calm and approach every question in the same way. So once you've read the question and before you get started on trying to find the answer, take a moment. Take a moment to think about how you can organize the information that you've been given in the question to actually help you to find the answer. And having a clear method and a method that you stick to in every question can really help provide you with the consistency to actually overcome that exam anxiety. So some of the longer task-based questions that you can get in accountancy exams are actually giving you a lot of information. And so it's very easy to just read the question and immediately try and jump to the solution, whereas actually organizing that information can really help you to get to the right answer faster. So when you're running through practice questions, you can actually practice identifying relevant information that you've been given in the question to help you find the answer. So when you read the question, make sure that you understand all of the different parties involved in the question, the length of time, sort of financial years in the question. Make sure you understand the situation that's being described. And then from there, you can actually make a list of any relevant information or relevant numbers that you've been given in the question. And then that can also help you to sort of rule out any extra information that sometimes they put in questions to sort of throw you off. So very often in these long-winded questions, they actually throw extra information at you that is not relevant to sort of just confuse you. And so identifying and pulling out the information that is critical and that is relevant to the question can actually help you exclude the information that isn't. And so from there, you've actually identified the situation, the context, the relevant information, and what the question is asking of you before you start working through your answer. Okay, so section 1 was all about knowing the material. And in section 2, I'm going to talk all about preparing for the exam. My first tip for preparing for the exam is to know your strengths and to know your weaknesses. I've already mentioned the traffic light system for this, but there's lots of different concepts out there that you can use. The traffic light system was just something that was very logical and worked really well for me. But applying a system to help you to understand and identify where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are within a certain syllabus or within a certain textbook is a really great way when you are crunched for time to help you to prioritise certain tasks and certain revision sections over others. So my first top tip is to know your strengths, know your weaknesses, and start there. My second tip for preparing for the exam is to know the key concepts. Again, if you are firefighting or if you're short on time, understanding the fundamental pillars for the exam is vital. Very often people can get stressed in exams when the questions that come up are not exactly copies of questions that you have practiced. And so understanding the fundamental concepts can help you in any question variations or differences in questions that you've practiced versus questions that come up in the exam. My next tip when preparing for the exam is to go through every single chapter and make flashcards. Flashcards just have a special place in my heart. I am definitely a visual learner and I definitely learn best through repetitiveness. Again, I think it helps me overcome that sort of like anxious part of my brain when it comes to learning information. And so doing things again and again and again really, really helped me. And so going through each chapter in your book, making flashcards about key concepts, again, as I mentioned earlier, listing a key concept or a key term, but then also adding extra space on your flashcard to talk about why, when, and where you might use, apply, or see that concept can do great things for retaining and applying that information. I've actually got a link in the description to this video to my very, very, very favourite flashcards. They actually come on a little chain, and so when I was in a build-up to an exam, I would actually put them on my car keys, and every single time I picked my car keys up, I flicked to a page and I made myself go through the flashcard before I moved on to whatever task I was doing that involved me picking up my keys. And so there's a link in the description to this video if you want to check out those flashcards. I absolutely love them. My final top tip when it comes to preparing for the exams is basically just over-prepare. Take every single test you can find. There is so much accounting content out there. I used to go through every single practice paper and do it 3 times. The first time I would sit any practice paper, I did it open book. So I would either have a textbook or my flashcards with me, and I would allow myself access to the textbook while I was completing the exam. 4 weeks later, I would do the test again, but closed book. And then after the test, I would go through and traffic light every single question and work out where I needed to focus on. And then 2 weeks after that, I would do the paper again, probably about a week before the final exam. So every single paper I had, I did at least 3 times before every exam, and that really, really helped not only calm my nerves, but helped me to apply everything that I'd learned, improve in between every single test, and then take it again with confidence. My top tips for you when taking an exam or practicing for taking an exam, number 1 is to keep track of your time. Timing can catch so many people out. It could be that within the structure of your exam, certain questions are worth more points and so you can allocate more time, but just having a metric so I used to know per point how many minutes I could apply for that question and try and take it from there. I also wasn't afraid to move on and flag the question and come back to it later. Again, I found that I could get really worked up on one question and actually it was just counterproductive. So I would flag the question and come back to it later. My next top tip is just to remind you that multiple choice questions should only take a couple of minutes to solve and that you really should spend most of your time on the written or longer questions. My final tip is to mimic the test environments as much as you can. So taking an exam in like dull lighting with a candle lit with some music in the background is not going to prepare your brain to actually sit in a very well lit room in complete silence and do the same tests. There is huge science and data behind the fact that if you practice in exam conditions, your brain actually performs much better when you get to the exam. It's not a huge shock to your brain at that point that you're taking an exam, and it can find it much better to actually retain information and pull back remembered information if you have practiced in that environment. Oh my gosh, I literally spent so long pulling together my top tips, and I spent so long thinking about what my top tips would be, and as I just recorded and ran through all of this information, I was just thinking that I really wish I could have watched this video before my exams, because as I said at the beginning, I really feel like I learned the hard way. When I started my accounting exams, I didn't know how I learned best. I didn't know that flashcards or traffic light systems worked really well for me. I didn't understand that I should sit practice exams in a practice exam environment. I didn't know that it was okay to do open book tests and then take the test again a little bit later to just help you build your confidence and build your practice taking the exams. And so I feel really privileged and really happy to be able to pull this content together for you, spend some time with you, and hopefully just play a really positive part in your study, revision and exam journey. Thank you again to First Intuition for sponsoring this video. If you need some help passing your professional exams, you can find out more about First Intuition by using the links in the description to this video. Thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Please do let me know in the comments if you've got any top tips, what your favourite flashcards are, whether or not you use the traffic light system, and actually come back to this video, save this video somewhere, and when you get your exam results, come back in the comments and let me know how you got on. I respond to every single comment on my YouTube channel, and I'm just so grateful to have you all here with me today. So thank you so much for spending some time with me today. Good luck in your next exams, and I hope to see you again very soon.